What up? Welcome to my Stitcher Geralf EDH deck list. What I call Zombie Mill. Cool. Because Mill's not cool, but this deck is cool. Why? Because I said so. And if people at the table ask, why is your Mill deck cool? You just say, because it is. That's how it works. So what does Stitcher Geralf do? He's the commander of the deck. He's the whole reason I built the deck. You can pay 2 and a blue, tap them, each player mills 3, exile the 2 creature cards, put into the graveyard this way, and then you make an XX blue zombie creature token where X is the total power of the cards exiled this way. So you tap them, you mill everybody, you maybe steal somebody else's creatures, maybe you steal some of your own creatures, because some creatures in the deck are good for you to get rid of. But yeah, first thing you might notice with the commander, he costs 5 mana, and this costs 3 mana. That's not very cheap. So we're running a lot of mana rocks, and by that I mean like there's probably 10, and that's a lot of mana rocks for me. Arcane Signet is an Arcane Signet. Codex Shredder is a mill, but also you can return a card from your graveyard to your hand. So let's say you mill a card that you didn't want to mill, just bring it back. It's a little expensive to do, but that's fine. Felwar's in here. It's a 2 mana rock. Grimoire of the Dead is in here. Is a fun one. Pay 1, tap it, discard a card. You can put a study counter on the Grimoire, and then you can tap it, remove 3 study counters, sack it, and then put all creatures from all graveyards on the battlefield under your control, and they're black zombies in addition to their other colors and types. What this means is later on in the game, after everybody's milled a bunch of cards from their deck, you just bring all the creatures back. It's kind of nuts. Illusionist's Bracers is here to double up the activated ability of your commander. Lightning Greaves is here to protect your commander, among other cards. Midnight Clock is in here once, so you don't accidentally deck yourself out before somebody else, because the deck's not running Labman or Thoracle. And 2, it's a 3 mana rock, and it will refresh your hand early as well, so it's a good card. Mindstone is in here as a 2 mana rock. Sapphire Medallion is in here because you're playing mono blue, and most of the cards are blue. Sky Diamond is in here as a bad 2 mana rock. Soul Ring is probably the second best legal mana rock right now, besides like maybe Mana Vault. I don't know. Depends on the deck. Soul Guide Lantern's here, so you can just sack it to exile opponent's graveyards. You can mill them all and then exile all their graveyards, so they're really just screwed. And Swiftfoot Boots are in here the same reason as Lightning Greaves are in here. Thought Vessel's another alright 2 mana rock. And creatures. So the creatures are split between playable creatures, and originally this deck was kind of zombie kind of mill, because zombies like being in the trash, but in blue they doesn't actually matter. And just big cards that you want to hit with Geralf. So a good example is Ancient Stone Idol. This one also does have the upside that it costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature, which means if it's stuck in your hand, you can maybe cast it for less than 10. That was the point with all the big creatures in the deck, is they have an upside when you cast them, not just being milled, because sometimes you just can't get rid of it. Artisan of Kozilek's a 9 mana 10/9. When you cast it, you can return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is just a generic kind of good card. Also has Annihilator too. Benthic Anomaly is devoid, and whenever you cast a spell for each opponent, choose a creature that player controls, create a token of a copy of one of those creatures. So you pick one of the 3 creatures you chose, and you make a copy of it, except its power is equal to the total power of all 3 creatures, and toughness is equal to the total toughness of all 3, and it's a colorless Eldrazi. Big mouthful to say you pick 3 creatures, you make one of them, and you steal all their stats and combine them. Cleaver Scab is a zombie creature. You can sacrifice another zombie, create 2 tokens that are copies of the sacrificed creature. You can sacrifice a big zombie token you made from Geralf, and then make 2 copies of it. You just double your zombies. Colossus of Akros is an 8 mana 10/10 with Defender Indestructible and Monstrosity 10. Mainly in here because he's an 8 mana 10/10 for Geralf. Crashing Drawbridge is 2 mana, give things haste until the end of turn, which is really, really useful. Denizen of the Deep is a big card. When it enters, you can return each other creature you control to its owner's hand. It's not a you have to, but yeah. Which is fine, because you just don't, it just never enters. Desolation 10 is a 10 mana 2 10/10s, which is better than a lot of cards, just stat-wise, it's funny. Eternal Skylord is one of the new zombies from the Aether Drift Commander precon. Whenever it enters, you amass zombies too, and zombie tokens you control have flying. It's just the zombies have flying. Zombie tokens have flying, which is really, really useful when your commander makes zombie tokens, and usually they're big. Fate Stitcher, 4 mana, you can tap or untap another permanent. It also has an earth, and it's also a zombie, so it kind of just hits all those right things that you want for the deck, because being able to untap your Geralf, do the same effect twice in a turn, double the mill, double the zombies. It's great. Geralf Visionary Stitcher is another one. Zombies that control flying, and you can pay blue, tap it, sack another non-token creature, and make an XX blue zombie creature token where X is the sacrifice creature's toughness. I just realized this would be really, really cool in like a theft deck. You just steal people's stuff and then make them into zombies. Hordewing Scab, other zombies you control have flying. It also has flying, and whenever one or more zombies you control deal combat damage to one or more of your opponents, you draw that many cards. You draw cards equal to the amount of opponents dealt damage, and then you discard that many cards. So it could be a draw 3, discard 3 every turn. Jockle Mortar is a 7 mana 12/12, enters tapped. When it comes in, you sacrifice 5 lands, and you have to play an island to untap him. So he's just a card you mill. Same with Metalwork Colossus, although it costs X less, where X is the total amount of non-creature artifacts, and you do run a lot of those, so it's could be played as like a cheaper 10/10. Polar Kraken's an 11 mana 11/11 with trample, upkeep, sack a land, and it comes into play tapped. Which, I mean, you could like play it later on in the game when you have a bunch of lands, or you could just sack it. Prophet of the Scarab, another Aether Drift 1, Vigilance, and whenever this creature enters, draw cards equal to the number of zombie cards you control, or the number of zombie cards in your graveyard, whichever is greater. So typically you'll draw a lot of cards with this if you're not playing it on curve. Repository Scab is a 4 mana 3/3, has exploit, and when it exploits, you return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. You're playing Mel, and all the good mill cards are instants and sorceries, so yeah. Ruin Crab is Ruin Crab. If you don't know, it has landfall, each opponent mills 3. It's just a good generic mill card. Selhoff Entomber is tapped, discard a creature card, draw a card. This is just a good way to find cards that you need. And the deck does run 24 creatures, so it's not too hard to discard one. This is a 7 mana 10/10. You can champion an elemental, so when it enters, you sacrifice an elemental. Then when this leaves play, you return that card. It's yeah. It's just a 10/10 for Geralf. Mind Skinner's in here. Love this card. It's a 3 mana 10/1. Can't be blocked, and if social control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage, and each opponent mills that many cards. Kinda nutty when you're making like a big zombie, and you have a bunch of zombies hit a bunch of different people, and then everybody just ends up milling like 30 cards. Pretty good. Undead Alchemist is a zombie. Other zombies. If a zombie you control would deal combat damage to a player, instead that player puts that many cards from the top of his or her library in his or her graveyard. So similar to Mind Skinner. Whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from his or her library, exile that card and put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. So you also make zombies out of it. It's crazy. Vizier of the Tumbling Sands is tapped to untap another target permanent. It also has cycling. When you cycle it, you can untap a permanent. And Wonders in here. Just when it's in the trash, everything has flying. Everything you have has flying, which is sick. On to the enchantments. We got Drown Secrets. Whenever you cast a blue spell, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. There's a lot of very good generic enchantments that mill a little bit. Unfortunately, that one is target player, which is just worse than a 4-player pod, like 1v1. Memory Erosion, 3 mana. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, they put the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. So players get punished for playing the game. Everybody loves that. Psychic Corrosion, 3 mana. Whenever you draw a card, each opponent puts the top 2 of their library into their graveyard, which is pretty good because you're playing blue, so you'll always end up drawing. If not, you're still milling everybody 2 every turn. Training Grounds, activate abilities creatures you control cost 2 less to activate. This ability can affect less than 1. That's just really useful because all the zombies that have activated effects and Geralf cost more than 3 or have 2 generic in it, so it always does its full value. And then Instants. We're running Aetherize because Cyclonic Rift is expensive. It's a game changer, and this card is worse, but if you only draw one player's ire, it's not as worse. Still worse. And if you can't refuse, get Counterspell, We love counter spells. Brainstorm, draw 3, put 2 back on top. You can do this before you do the mill, put 2 big cards from your hand back on top, and then mill them both, make a really big zombie. Brain Surge, similar to Brainstorm. Counterspell is Counterspell. Dig Through Time is here because you're going to have a lot of cards in your trash, and a lot of them are going to be dead if they're lands or instants or sorceries or whatever. So yeah, this just lets you look through the top 7, pick 2, add them to your hand, put the rest on the bottom. Drowning Dreams is here as a late game win con. Target player draws X cards, or target player mills twice X cards, or if you have your commander both. I've won a game with Omo where I played this, and I think I like made somebody draw 50 and somebody else mill 100, and I'm like, oh, cool. Laztep Plating is amass 1, which is nice because it makes a zombie. And also, you and other permanents gain hexproof till end of turn. It's a nice kind of piece of protection. I'm surprised more blue decks don't play this, but maybe that's just because counterspells are better. Negate is Negate. Reality Shift is an exile for a blue card, which is great. Same with Resculpt. And Thought Scour is target player mills 2, and then you draw a card. So you can mill yourself here. Mainly this card gets played in Pauper, where it does use it to mill yourself, but here you're just mill somebody to draw a card. For the lands, we got Drownyard Temple. You can pay 3 to return it from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. I thought that was neat. You mill it because you always play mill, and you just like mill your own lands and you feel bad. You mill it, but then you can pay 3, you can bring them back, which is cool. Bunch of islands. Obviously, Mystic Sanctuary is in here because why wouldn't it be? I feel like it goes in every blue deck that runs islands. And then Riptide Laboratory because Geralf is a wizard. He's a human wizard. On to the sorceries. We have Cut Your Losses. 6 mana, casualty 2. Target player mills half their library, rounded down. They have casualty 2 means you sacrifice creature with power 2 or greater, and then you copy the spell. So players are milling 3/4 of their decks. Dream Cache is 3 mana, draw 3, put 2 from your hand back on top. This is just worse Brainstorm, but in the deck you still want to play it. Fractured Sanity, 3 mana, each opponent mills 14, or you can cycle it to make each opponent mill 4. Usually the 14 is better. Maddening Cacophony is kicker, each opponent mills 8, or if it's kicked, it's half their library rounded up, which is nice. Ponder's here just to see the top of your library and draw a card. It's a good generic blue card. Same with Serum Visions. I actually prefer this over Preordain because you can draw a card, then look at the top so you get more information for your mill with Geralf. You could also just play Preordain and Serum Visions, or whichever you want. Tasha's is mill total mana value 20 or more for each player, or actually exile mill. And then Treasure Cruise, in here the same reason why Dig Through Time is. You're going to have a lot of cards in your trash. Windfall is Windfall. I mean, yeah. You make everybody maybe mill like up to 7 cards. Maybe like 5 or 6 on average. Onto the maybe board. These are cards that I think could work in the deck if you built it a little differently, or just really good cards that I didn't put in because they're expensive. Body Doubles 1 when you... I think this card's really neat. It can enter as a copy of a creature in a graveyard. This can be your big Eldrazi's. This can be an opponent's really useful card that they've milled. Necro Duality, whenever a non-token zombie enters, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Unfortunately, this is non-token zombie. If it didn't, I'd be playing it in the deck for sure, because you'd be doubling your tokens with Geralf, but I'm not running that many zombies, and all the zombies I'm running aren't that crazy good. So you don't really need to make copies of them. Overcharged Amalgams, 4 mana zombie horror, flash flying exploit. When it exploits, you counter target spell, activate ability, or triggered ability. So it's kind of a creature counter spell. Bongifies in here, Rabbit Hybridization, you can play more removal. I decided I didn't want to because I wanted to play a little more creatures. And 24 I still think is really low for a mill deck where you want to mill your own creatures. But you're playing mono blue, so I feel like that lets you play a lot of other cards. Propaganda's in here, creatures, I mean it's pseudo protection, similar to Aetherize. Makes people less likely to attack you. Rooftop Storm is in here because paying 0 rather than paying a mana cost for a zombie is very, very good. Same reason why I'm not running Necro Duality, it's just not worth it. I'm not running enough zombies. Scourge of the Fleets is a 7 mana board wipe. When it enters the battlefield, return each creature your opponent's control with toughness X or less to its owner's hand, or X the number of islands you control. Obviously you play a lot of islands in mono blue. Scroll Rack and Sensei's Divining Top are both cards that just kind of let you manipulate the top of your deck with cards in your hand, which is very, very strong when you care about milling the top of your deck. Reason why they're not on the deck, $23, $25. Scabruinator is a 3-mana zombie horror. As an additional cost, you exile 3 creature cards from your graveyard, and then it has flying, and you can cast it from your grave. So this is a 3-mana 5/6. Like, it can also just be played as a win con. It has flying, 5 power. I think it's a pretty solid card. If you want to go more into zombies with this deck, which I think might be a little more fun than Mill, this card would be better. Teresian Mindbreaker is a 7-mana 6/4. When it attacks, defending player mills half their library rounded up. Reason why this is not in the deck, it's a 7-mana 6/4. Like, it's such a slow card. I could see it being played because if you mill it with Geralf, you do just add 6. You exile it and you add 6 to the zombies' power and toughness, which is nice. Has Unearth, so even if you don't decide to exile it, you can bring it back once a turn. Yeah, I think it's a pretty alright card. But yeah, that's the deck. So I guess I'll quickly go over some recs. Although I was looking at some earlier for Mana Rocks. Mesmeric Orb, Ristic Study, even more even more salt cards. Or a player mills card, you can create a 1/1 black horror. That's pretty cool. Factor Fiction, Labman, removal or pseudo removal. When a player loses life, that player mills that many cards. That's pretty good. Where's the really good? There's a few really good artifacts that Mill cares about that I didn't put in the deck. Was it like whenever you untap a permanent, you mill a card? Yeah, I think that's a big one. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. I'll be back next week. Maybe I think I want to try like some mono black control. I want to try building some mono black control thing. So either like the Giza from OTJ or something else. But yeah, I'll be back next week. Goodbye. Thank you for watching.